أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا من سيئات أعمالنا من يهد الله فهو المهتد ومن يضلل فلن تجد له وليا مرشدا ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. I want to start by thanking the organizers once again for inviting us and for organizing this convention in such a nice way, alhamdulillah. So it's a pleasure for me to be here again. And once again, this time, I will try to be accessible during this convention. I know that during these talks it's a bit difficult because you are so many, but I will try to be at the booth. Just by the way, after every talk I will be at the booth, which is E31, also responding to some of the questions and also introducing the sisters and the brothers to the work that we are trying to do on applied Islamic ethics for our world today in 11 fields. So it might be interesting for you to know what we are trying to do these days to try to implement, to reconcile Islamic legislation, التشريع الإسلامي والأخلاق. Al-akhlaq as being a core, an essential concept in our tradition is to bring back this dimension. So inshallah, after this talk and many times you will see that I will try to be at the booth and meeting with the sisters and the brothers. I was asked to talk about an essential concept from an Islamic understanding from within our tradition when it comes to faith and reform and the way we have to understand reform. So as I'm always repeating this, and I think that now you know that, but في الإعادة والتكرار استفادة, that we have to repeat things. Once again, Islam doesn't need reform. We are not talking about reforming Islam, we are talking about reforming the Muslim minds and the Muslim understandings, and the Quran and the Sunnah al-Rasul ﷺ are going to stay as they are as text. Now what we need is to come again with a better understanding. And understanding that the scriptural sources were revealed in a specific time doesn't mean that we are making them relative to that time. What we should understand is that we extract the eternal principles from the sources and we try to implement them any time. So this is why we are saying Al-Islamu salihun li kulli zamanin wa makanin, meaning it's our reference is universal beyond time and beyond space. Now, having said that, we also understand that we need to reform our understanding, and it's also the notion of tajdeed that we have in the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. Allah يرسل لهذه الأمة على رأس كل 100 سنة من يجدد لها دينها, which means once again that Allah is going to send. It's not only one person or one sheikh, it could be man, it could be plural, people who are going to help this community to renew, to revive its understanding, not the text, but its understanding and the way we understand it. Now, this is the starting point of our discussion, but let me come to the best way for us to understand the essence of reform in our tradition. And the best example we have is the Prophet ﷺ. Because in fact, there is something which it's part of al-fitra. Al-fitra is the way we have been created. Fitrat Allah allati fatara an-nas alayha. This, and we don't agree. By the way, among the scholars, you can see that from al-fuqaha, the jurists, and the way they were understanding fitra, al-falasifa, al-mutakallimun, we have a different understanding of what is the fitra. Some, for example, like Ibn Taymiyyah, was saying الإسلام هو الفطرة هي الإسلام, meaning fitra is Islam. That we find this also in the some of the books of al-Maqasidiyun, coming with this understanding that in fact what we have is this, the essence of al-Tawheed in our heart. You have other scholars saying, no, it's not exactly this. This is the aspiration that we are naturally looking for the truth. And in fact, this natural aspiration towards transcendence is something that we understand, which is part of the verse that we وَإِذْ أَخَذَ رَبُّكَ مِنْ بَنِي آدَمَ مِنْ ظُهُورِهِمْ ذُرِّيَّتَهُمْ وَأَشْهَدَهُمْ عَلَى أَنفُسِهِمْ أَلَسْتُ بِرَبِّكُمْ قَالُوا بَلَى. Meaning that in our heart there is something which is this natural aspiration towards at least the answer to why am I here. This is something which is important. So now القلب السليم إلا من أتى الله بقلب سليم, meaning the people who are going to be saved are people who are coming back to this essence that is the natural aspiration, and get it the answer to the why. And our answer to the why is La ilaha illallah. There is only one God. So it's this oneness of God is the answer to this yearning. This is why we understand and how we understand the natural path of Islam. So between this and from this natural state to how to be a Muslim, how to be a believer, this is where reform is essential. This is where we have to understand. In fact, to keep the natural state, we have to struggle. To keep this fitra, we have to struggle. Why? Because many things can cover this natural state. And you know what is the very meaning of covering? El-kufr. El-kufr, the etymology of kufr is covering what was there. So in fact, Allah is calling us not to something which is new, but something which is there and sometimes covered. So reform in our life is the ongoing process through which we discover, we uncover, we come back to the source, we come back to the natural state. And this, there is no way to come back to this without struggling, without effort, without the very understanding that our faith is about this ongoing effort that we need to undertake during our life. Having said that, now we come to the Prophet ﷺ, and he himself, when he was young, was within a society and they were believing in many gods, in idols, and he was not sharing this. He was looking for something. He was coming back to the fitrah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala took him from this society and made him look for the truth, and he was. And this is where we need to understand that the reform process through which he went is something that we need to understand from within. Not that something which is a history or a story of the past. This is the eternal story of the quest for what is right. And what the Prophet ﷺ did, it was for looking for the truth. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala took him and made him experience something which is essential. And that sometimes we are not giving much attention to the very short chapters or surah at the end of the Quran that we need to get and we need to understand. In fact, he changed first his vision, his understanding of the world. And then you have to keep in mind something which is essential, that in fact, to come back to al-haq, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling you, you will first look at the world and look at yourself. Get the verse, سَنُرِيهِمْ آيَاتِنَا فِي الْآفَاقِ وَفِي أَنفُسِهِمْ حَتَّى يَتَبَيَّنَ لَهُمْ أَنَّهُ الْحَقِّ. The truth is coming not from just straight down to you, it's coming from different ways. And first, surrounding you. And it's exactly what you have in the Quran. That in fact, the first thing that you have to do is to reform your vision, your understanding of the world. سَنُرِيهِمْ آيَاتِنَا فِي الْآفَاقِ
what did Allah with the Prophet ﷺ change his vision of al-kawn, the creation, by talking not about him first, but first about nature. Wal-qamar, wal-shams, wal-duha. Everything around you is changing. Why? Because when you say La ilaha illallah, it means that every single thing around you has a meaning. A meaning. Meaning what? This is a sign. This is coming from Allah. And you try and you get the very understanding of this. It's through the meaning of things that you have to reform yourself to come back to your essence. So you have to understand. You have to get it. So everything around you is going to change. At the point where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that this revelation is coming from His rahmah. Remember Surah Ar-Rahman, Ar-Rahman, علم القرآن, خلق الإنسان, علمه البيان. And look at what is coming just after this. الشمس والقمر بحسبان والنجم والشجر يسجدان. Meaning, الشمس والقمر بحسبان, this talks to your mind. والنجم والشجر يسجدان, this talks to your heart. But two have to change the vision. You have to change your understanding. So this is the very essence of our first understanding, is change your vision, reform your vision. And this is where there is this difference between being with Allah and forgetting Allah. It's the way you look at things. It's the way you look at al-kawn. You have to reform. And this is where, by looking at the world in such a way, you are going to reform yourself. And once again, it means for us in our education in the West or wherever we are, that this is the process where we need to reconcile the very essence of our religion with al-kawn, with the creation, not to disconnect ourselves from this. Because the beginning of a modernity that is a fragmentation of the self and knowledge is to separate ourselves from the whole environment, the whole creation. Because there are signs. And the first book that we have, once again, has to do with this. So we need to change our vision. To the point that we have in the Quran, تُسَبِّحُ لَهُ السَّمَوَاتُ السَّبْعُ وَالْأَرْضُ وَمَنْ فِيهِنْ. Everything in the creation is, in fact, glorifying Allah. وَلَكِنْ لَا تَفْقَهُونَ تَسْبِحَهُمْ. This is the later say, وَإِن مِّن شَيْءٍ إِلَّا يُسَبِّحُ بِحَمْدِهِ وَلَكِنْ لَا تَفْقَهُونَ تَسْبِحَهُمْ. You don't get this. Why? Because if you only use your mind, you don't get the very understanding of the relationship between Allah and this world. So the first thing that we have to do is this reform of our understanding, reform of our vision. First the understanding and then the vision. And with this, you are going to change the way you behave in your life. So there is here something which is connecting our vision with our action. And this is the process of reforming. Now, having said that, what is also important is we should understand our responsibility as people who are saying La ilaha illallah within this understanding, within this vision, this overall vision of the creation and the relationship that we need to have with nature, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is sending us signs through nature for us to understand our responsibility. Our responsibility towards Him, our responsibility towards nature, and our responsibility towards ourselves, and our responsibility towards our fellow human beings. And this is where the whole process has to start. What is our responsibility when this came to the Prophet ﷺ? So because you get this, أنه الحق, now you know that this is truth, because the world is telling you, and yourself, you will find in yourself the signs that are telling you that this is the truth. What do you have to do? Now starts the struggle. And the first that you need to understand is the first thing that you have to do is to reform yourself through an educational process. So you need to get knowledge. And the first thing that it's important, when the signs are sent to you, it means that you need to get the meaning, and the only way to get the meaning is through knowledge. Knowledge, al-ilm. Al-ilm means you get the knowledge of things. Al-fahm means you get the knowledge and you understand the signs that are sent by Allah. So the first reform is an intellectual one. And this intellectual one is connected to the other one, which is you need to reform your heart. And you need to reform your heart means what? If now you know that this creation is not with nonsense, it's not coming abasan, there is a meaning in everything that you see. Now you have to understand, because this is coming from Ar-Rahman and he is teaching you the Quran. Now you have to be thankful. This way of being thankful, this positive spiritual attitude towards Allah, by looking at things and saying thank you, Ash-Shukr, Anishkurillah, which is what Luqman was saying to his son. This is a very important intellectual and spiritual attitude. And to be positive, always start by thanking God. Always. Whatever happens in your life, Alhamdulillah, walhamdulillah ala kulli hal. Always. And these shapes in basic psychology, it's very important. Be positive. Whatever happens, this has a meaning. And sometimes, asa an takrahu shay'an wa huwa khayrun lakum. And in fact, everything that you are experiencing that at first hand you think it's bad could be the best thing happening in your life. Why? Because if you understand that Allah is not hating you, but He is testing you. He is a way of putting you or going through very difficult times. It's a way for Him to help you to come close to Him, if only you understand. It's very difficult to get when you are experiencing it, but this is something that you need to get before experiencing it. You have to be prepared to this. You have to be prepared to be facing everything in a positive way, saying it has a meaning. And if I get this, if I struggle to get the meaning, it still means that I love Allah and I am looking for His love. As long as you look for meaning, it means that Allah is close to your heart and close to your mind. So this is the positive attitude that we need to have, and it comes from your heart. It comes from a state of heart. It comes from al-iman, al-tawakkul, al-khushu', al-taqarub. All these dimensions that we are talking about are here essential in our understanding. And this is also something that we need to understand. Now, there is also, so we need to reform our mind, we need to reform our heart, and then we also need to reform our society. We need to reform the world. So as much as we are reforming our understanding of the Quran through time and through cultures, we need to reform ourselves, and we need to reform our mind and our heart, and we need to reform our society. Come to the verse of the Quran, الَّذِينَ إِن مَّكَّنَّاهُمْ فِي الْأَرْضِ أَقَامُوا الصَّلَاةَ وَآتَوُا الزَّكَاةَ وَأَمَرُوا بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَنَهَوْا عَنِ الْمُنكَرِ. What does it mean here? الَّذِينَ إِن مَّكَّنَّاهُم. When you are settled somewhere, the first thing that you do, أَقَامُوا الصَّلَاةَ. To do what? To reform yourself. أَتَوُا الزَّكَاةَ. To reform yourself. To struggle against your own selfishness. Give to the people. This is Allah's rights. For the poor and the poor's rights on your money. So first you start يَأْمُرُونَ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ, and then you command what is right and you resist what is bad. So the thing is to start with yourself and then to be active within the society. But to do this, there is one central notion that you need to get. Because I don't like all this business that we have now, but we have to reform and to change our mind. I think it's all good if only you understand that there are conditions to reform. And the first and essential condition, you are not going to reform anything if you don't get the very meaning of being free. Islam, it's about liberation. It's about freedom. The only way you are going to reform is by being free. And what do you have to do? The first thing that you have to do is to free yourself from yourself, because yourself is your first jail. No reform without freeing yourself. And how are you going to do this? And especially in the United States of America. Do you think you are free? Do you think here that you are intellectually and psychologically free? Look at your life. Look at the way your daily life is now organized for yourself. And the most intelligent or the most powerful culture is a culture telling you you are free if you follow your nature. Because you know from a spiritual teaching that your nature is the first jail. Why? Because you are attracted by your instincts, by your ego, and this is not freedom. This is the way you feel that you can do what you want, but you are not sure that what you want is what you want. Because somebody or some people or big corporation, they want for you to want what they want, making you think that what you want is what you want, while what you want is what they want. And it's all about money. You get that? So, no, please, you know the fatwa. So, here the point is, it's all about freedom. It's to free yourself. To say La ilaha illallah means free yourself. And free yourself at your level means here, it's to come back to this deep way of dealing with yourself. And what we have in Islam and in all the spiritual traditions, by the way, you know what is the difference between the consumerist society or the consumer society and all the spiritual way of life? All the spiritual ways of life are saying one thing: there is no freedom without discipline. And the consumer society is telling you freedom is about your nature. Follow your nature and you feel free, you feel good. And what we are responding, understanding, never. If you follow your nature, you are going to be sad and never get this happiness. Why? Because the happiness is coming from this inner discipline. We are resisting, so get this. In fact, to be free means to resist. To resist to this consumerist society, to all this attraction. زُيِّنَ لِلنَّاسِ حُبِّ الشَّهَوَاتِ. We have it in the Quran. But at the same time, we know that we are struggling for something which is beyond that. حَبَّبَ إِلَيْكُمُ الْإِيمَانِ وَزَيَّنَهُ فِي قُلُوبِكُمْ. There is something which is beautiful in your heart. If you don't get it, you are going to be jailed within your ego. So the first here is to reform yourself, is to look for freedom. Why am I saying this? I'm saying this because at the end of the old path that we are going back to Allah, freedom is essential. Freedom is essential because this is where exactly you are facing power. And the first is the power of your ego, is the power of your desires, of your instincts, and they are powerful. You cannot deny that this is very powerful, so you have to struggle. And to reform is now to resist. Now, you also have to do something which is very important. And maybe it's the most difficult task that you have as American Muslims. Is this double liberation. Because you have to free yourself from what? In the name of Islam, in the name of your principles, you have to free yourself from two potential cultures that are having an impact on you. The cultures of the origin and the surrounding culture, the world culture. Why? Because what we had, the first resistance that the prophets got was coming from the people saying what? بل وجدنا آباءنا كذلك يفعلون وجدنا آباءنا وجدنا بل وجدنا, meaning we find our fathers and mothers doing like this, we are following. That's the natural status quo. We don't want you to bother us with something which is new. And you as Muslims, sometimes you find your fathers and your mothers doing things that you thought were Islamic, and they are not. This is cultural, and cultural dressing to something which is, what are the Islamic principles? So you have to question the cultures of origin in the name of the eternal Islamic principles. It's a resistance. Free yourself from the cultures or the cultural imposition. You have to free yourself. So this is also something which is important, that all the people, when they got and they had the messengers and the prophets, alayhim salam, coming, they say, قالوا بل وجدنا آباءنا كذلك يفعلون. Don't talk about, and then we as Muslims, we have to resist. But you also have to resist to few things that are, you know, when we are saying you are American Muslims or Muslim Americans, you know that you have to be also resisting some features of the American or the world culture. That's also, you have to liberate yourself. To reform is to liberate yourself, meaning you have to take this intellectual stance where you take what is good and you are selective, and this is not easy. And many of the brothers and the sisters who are converting to Islam, they have a problem with us because they can feel that we are colonized by the cultures of origin. Many of us in this room, we are much more Arabs than Muslims or Asian than Muslims, and we confuse everything. And we have now a new trend of people coming from or converting to Islam, and sometimes they are confusing, thinking that their culture is better than the Arab culture. So it's a struggle of cultures, forgetting the principle. And I even heard somebody saying, you know what, we the converts, we are going to teach you your religion. I'm sorry, this is arrogance. We are all, in the name of our religion, we all have to struggle against the cultural imposition. That's the problem on many things. In the way we deal with time, in the way we deal with imagination, in the way we deal with fiction, in the way we deal with art, in the way we deal with women, in the way we deal with men, in the way we deal with children. Everything has to be questioned in the name of our religion. Having said that, and this is a very difficult struggle, it's maybe the most difficult one because this is the colonization of our minds, that we think this is Islamic and we don't have the means to question the cultural imposition, and we have to free ourselves. Reform is to free yourself from this. And my last point is about reforming our society. And once again, it's a question of freedom here. And I would say that, as I said, إن مكناهم في الأرض أقاموا الصلاة وأمروا بالمعروف والنهوا عن المنكر, the end of the verse here. And I would say that in our society, wherever we are, and this is your situation, it's also about freedom. And being free in your society, I would say that I don't know if you realize, you American Muslims, how big, how great, how difficult is your own responsibility, not only for the United States of America, but for the world, and also for the Muslim majority countries, because you have to be free as Muslims, meaning that now you have to face the big challenges. I'm sorry that sometimes I come to this country and say, you know, the Muslims here, they don't want to talk about this, it's too sensitive. At the end, you are free American citizens, you are almost free. Apparently you are free, or you pretend you are free. But in fact, you are very scared. The great majority of you in this room are not courageous enough to do with any local authority or political authority what Musa alayhi salam did with Pharaoh. When he was sent, and I say, وَقُلَ لَهُ قَوْلًا لَيِّنًا, it doesn't mean that you have to be violent. I'm sorry to say that we are ending up apologizing on everything. Oh no, we are not violent. We know there is a big difference between us and Daesh. That's fine. Daesh has nothing to do with Islam. These are people using Islam, and we are condemning this. But that's not the only thing that we have to do all our life. We are not going to be apologetic and apologizing on everything which is done by Muslims against Islam. Now we want Muslims to do things in the name of Islam and to be visible in the United States. And it means here, if you want to reform, you have to reform this country for the better. As you are critical with the cultures of origin, you have to be critical with this culture. This culture, now you have to get it. The United States of America is still struggling with racism between the black and the white, whatever is the reality for your president. So no. You have to struggle with this. You have to reform this. Islam should be an added value in the United States of America because Muslims should be against all types of racism. No discussion, no hierarchy. We don't accept that. That's the point. No. And it's also something which has to do with social justice. Social justice, because we have a class problem in this country, and you know this. Muslims in the United States of America, in the name of the universal principles of Islam, should be against injustice and should be against discriminations. And if a black man is killed in this society and the world is quiet and only black people are demonstrating, I'm sorry, you Muslims are not doing the job. You are not the dignified voice of Muslims in this country. You should say no to this kind of discrimination. You have to be visible. Muslims, my brothers and sisters, stop talking about and being visible in this country only when we speak about Islam. Speak about what is right. This is where you are Muslims. This is where we talk about Islam. So it has to do with social justice. And it has to do also with anything which has to do with power. Be careful. Be careful. You read and you like it. You read and you like the Surah 12 of the Quran talking about Yusuf alayhi salam. You like this story. Why? Because he was in jail and he spent time and say, El sijnu ahabbu ilayya, that this prison is better. But I can tell you something. There are some people in your jail in the United States of America. They are innocent. I wonder if we are aware that it might be that on the day of judgment, they will experience the freedom, and we are experiencing something which is this imaginable or this wrong, this apparent freedom that we have. It might be that you seem to be free today. They are free in jail, and you are in jail in this kind of freedom. It might be that Muslims today should also think, and please, stop talking to me after a talk and you come to me and say, you know what, it was very powerful. I'm fed up of this reaction about it's powerful, nice, come again. It's time now to see brothers and sisters at the local level, at the social level, in political field, to be involved with this. No reform without freedom, no freedom without courage, and this is the way we follow the Prophet ﷺ. This is the way we follow the Prophet ﷺ, and this is the way we are clear. There are principles that are not disputable. We are not going to change them. We respect the principles. We pray 5 times a day. We fast. We give a zakah. And then we free ourselves from ourselves. We free ourselves from cultures, the dominant culture and the cultures of origin, and we change this society for the better. This is to be a reformer. This is to be min as-salihin. Min as-salihin. And wherever we are, the only added value of the Muslims is to be min as-salihin. So ask yourself, at your personal level, at your family level, at your cultural level, at your social level, at the political level, can you say about yourself, looking at yourself in the mirror, I am min as-salihin? Not with words, please. Please don't be little Obamas. Obama, your president, is great as to the words. Now, we are still waiting for things to happen in this country. He promised so much. Have you seen something? The only thing that will be remembered, he was the first African American elected. That's it. Now, you American Muslims, don't be little Obamas speaking nice words and we don't see anything. You have to be visible through actions and behavior and not through words. Although words could be the first step, and we are still waiting. May Allah help us. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.